What happens when an ag technology is built by experts who've been working directly with farmers for decades and offered for free? Well, that question of adoption gets answered real quick.
We did a soft beta launch, had some initial rollout. Within 24 hours, we had 250 users sign up. By April 10th, we had 1 million acres enrolled in the system.
That's Shay Foulk with AgView Solutions. They recently launched their Farm Profit Manager tool for cost of production, equipment analysis, and farm business decision making. They offer it for free, and their business model is to charge for consulting.
It gives more intrinsic value back to the humans that are behind the tools. And that's where I think people get so worried about AI and what it's going to do and how it's going to affect the space. I think there's even more potential in the consulting side to be able to add that human element on top of these other layers.
I think this is a sign of things to come as the cost of development trends lower due to AI. That puts us in this really unique time today of transformation in technology delivery models.
And how I would refer to this from the AI piece is a year ago was too early and a year from now is too late. That's my personal opinion on how I think about it.
Shay Foulk of AgView Solutions on today's Future of Agriculture podcast. Hello, fellow Ag Nerd. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Future of Agriculture podcast. My name is Tim Hamrich, and every week you and I get to hear from the farmers, founders, innovators, investors, the people shaping the future of the ag industry. Today's guest is Shay Foulk of AgView Solutions and this Farm Profit Manager app. I've known Shay for years now as a podcaster and a farm management consultant, and his presence, of course, on social media, particularly on X. Shay and I also have both been a part of webinars from Fractal Agriculture in the past. And shout out to Ben at Fractal for helping to make today's episode happen, the connection between Shay and myself on this story. Just some background before we dive in on Shay. Shay Foulk is a farm business consultant with AgView Solutions who works with operations to improve profitability and efficiency, manage risk, and grow. They offer this to farmers in the form of consulting, coaching, peer group facilitation, and Profit Manager, which is now the Farm Profit Manager app that we're going to talk quite a bit about today. He grew up in Northeast Iowa working on a row crop and livestock operation with his father, uncles, and grandfathers, and he attended Iowa State University where he majored in agronomy. After graduating, Shay enlisted in the United States Army, serving 5 years with the 75th Ranger Regiment. He continues to serve with the Illinois National Guard out of Peoria. He also farms and runs Monier Seed with his father-in-law and his wife Hannah near Sparland, Illinois. Shay's stepdad, Chris Barron, started AgView Solutions clear back in the mid-90s. He developed the foundation for what became Profit Manager when he noticed that he knew a lot about his numbers on the hog production side of his farming operation and wanted to apply that same business analysis to the crops side. So with his college roommate, he developed the first version of Profit Manager on DOS. And after years of using it and consulting directly with farmers, he turned it into an Excel-based tool. So for years, over 20 years, they sold the tool and offered consulting services. Shay joined the business in 2019, and just this year, they converted that Excel-based Profit Manager into this new app called Farm Profit Manager and offered it for free. And that is where I will drop you into today's conversation with Shay Foulk.
The Legacy Profit Manager was a $2,500 one-time purchase. You own it for life. And what comes with that is the service and support. What came with that was the updates, any new features that we rolled out, we would kick that out in Excel format. And transparently, we drug our feet for probably 6 years from people asking us, hey, are you going to turn this into a software? I'd love to be able to do things on my phone. And we push back a little bit in truth because of the flexibility that Excel offers. And, you can do so much with it. And also looking at the base of the clientele that we were working with is they knew Excel, they were comfortable with it. They could add in tabs and worksheets that they had already built. So that was a functionality piece that came from not wanting to change it into a software. The other thing was the cost. And, we would have had hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, into developing the tool. Fast forward to late 2024, when we saw this parabolic increase in what these intelligence tools can do. that's when we started to kind of get the itch a little bit more. And then what really set in, from the AI development side was that reduced cost to entry. So sorry, I got away from myself there a little bit. $2,500 one-time purchase, you own it for life. But what that really was a universal language for us to sit down across from your farm operation and have an insight to your numbers in a format that we understood so that we could advise and consult and assist you with whatever your challenges were, whether that was a growth opportunity or you were losing acres or you needed to figure out how to transition with mom and dad in the operation. So that was a one-on-one consulting service that we offer on an annual basis. So we do one full day in-person meeting with you and your team, whoever's relevant there. And then we're with you for a year of services on those specific, subject areas. A lot of it was transition planning. Probably 60 to 65% of the clients that we work with today are people that are going through transition or some form of collaborative effort or some sort of large growth opportunity or just any growth opportunity. But a lot of these opportunities are getting larger and larger. That's what the consulting basis looked like, as well as we facilitate farm peer groups. So we put 8 farm operations or ag businesses together. And then we also host an annual executive business conference for about 150 operations on just pure business development side. So those are kind of the income sources and how we operate on the AgView Solutions side to provide that value and perspective back to the people that we work with.
Right. Yeah, I think that's important and interesting that, yeah, you're selling this tool for $2,500 for life, but that's not what sustains the business. What sustains the business is, using that tool to actually help them make better decisions, essentially.
Yeah. And the gamble that we took, because when we made the decision here at the beginning of 2026 to move to a software, first of all, and then to make it completely free. Sure, it wasn't the main part of our business, but it was a significant chunk of income. And so what we decided and what we doubled down on is we are consultants and we want to be good at consulting and we want to get this tool to as many people as possible. And part of that was the rollout of, AI. And we saw a lot of things being built that maybe didn't have the historical data behind them or didn't have the legacy or maybe didn't have the 30 years of intent behind like what AgView Solutions has. And we said, now is the time to make sure that we're putting a tool out there that's trusted, that has people behind it, farmers, real farmers, and people that have been doing this for a long time to make sure that we're getting the best product, a trusted product out to people. And so, yeah, the last 4 or 5 months here has been a real ride.
Yeah. So this is an interesting part of your story that I want to talk about, which is this is also a bet on your part that AI is not going to be enough, right? Okay, we can design a tool that's very helpful, but we want to plant our flag in the business of people helping people. Is that accurate? Because, for those who are catching up as we talk here, you had this Excel-based tool that was $2,500 for life. You used AI to build a software that you're going to offer for free and say, like, look, we will make our money through one-on-one consulting, facilitating peer groups, and this event that you do. And that's where we think the future of our business is going to be.
Absolutely. That's spot on. It was a gamble on the consulting side and the human element of it, as well as what was being asked of us. And I prided ourselves and kind of what Chris had done over his legacy within the consulting side is listening to what farmers were asking for and then building it. And we kept getting a lot of feedback of people saying, look, I'm tired of all the subscriptions. I'm tired of this amount of money on an annual basis to have a tool that I want to just work and make simple decisions with. And so as I went through the thought process on that, it's like, okay, so what happens if we get this tool in more people's hands? More people are making better business decisions. And when they can make better financial business decisions, now they're in a place to tackle the bigger challenges that needs the human element, the transition planning, the doubling your farm size, the new business venture that you want to be a part of, figuring out how to collaborate with another farm operation. those are the pieces that more people that have this piece of the puzzle figured out, the cost of production, as well as some of the awesome like integrations and tools that we're building into it. More people that have that figured out, the more demand there's going to be for our business. And by the way, if we're the ones that are providing that tool and providing that value to them, I hope that we're the ones that they want to call to say that, hey, that, we'd like to have you help us in our operation in other ways.
Right. Yeah. And this is just like what we've seen in content, or at least I've seen in content. You also, create a lot of content out there. Some people take the route of like, okay, I'm building this really valuable content, so I want to charge for it. Very few people do that successfully over the long term. The ones who are successful are the ones who monetize the content, use the content to build real valuable businesses alongside it. And I see the same thing happening in software, where the software itself is becoming more and more commoditized because it's more accessible to build it. And the real value that probably ought to be monetized is whatever you can do alongside it, which I think is really fascinating about what's happening with you.
I had a conversation today with a mentor of mine, and it was a recap of me giving an overview to our peer group around what this tool is doing and what it can do. And how he summarized it, I thought was really good. He said, when it comes to AI and the tools and the platforms moving forward, there's going to be people that build it, there's going to be people that want to buy it, and there's going to be people that ignore it. And I think the people that ignore it are eventually going to be people that buy it because, I referenced, your cell phone. You might not have liked touchscreen cell phones in 2012. People would have been resistant to that change, but now everybody has one. And you could, in the 1930s, you could ride your horse to town to deliver a load of grain, or you could hop in your, Ford truck and be way more efficient. So you can only ignore some of these things for so long, but the change is going to come with it. And yeah, we just doubled down on the idea that people are going to see the value and want a trusted partner in the space to come alongside them.
Right. And you pretty much already answered the sort of why now question. You said like in 2024 started to see the rise of these really powerful AI tools to do things like coding. I understand it's your brother and cousin who are students at Iowa State, Mac and Sam, who are behind actually building out the software. Is that right?
It is. So at our 2026 Executive Business Conference in Phoenix, both of them were in attendance, and they kind of came up to us afterwards. I did a co-presentation with Scott Klazowski, who's an intelligence expert with Future Point of View. And we basically just had a conversation around the fact of, I think this is in high demand for college age students. I think there's a ton of people that could capitalize on it. And they had both expressed interest in developing Profit Manager into Farm Profit Manager software. And so what I asked them to do was to independently develop what they think it should look like. And then we ran with the best version of that and then started over on the development side. So, two minds with the legacy foundation of 30 years essentially of development and progress to create a simple to use tool that gives a comprehensive picture, and then had them put their heads together with feedback from myself and Chris on what it should look like, what it should feel like, how it should present itself, what capabilities and features it needed to have to develop out a viable product within the software. And, a lot of the tools that were used, so Claude coding, and then there's several other, like 8 or 9 other intelligence tools that they use to streamline, build it together, protect data, do audit checks, all these things that go into it. It comes very, very natural to them. So part of the reason that we didn't develop it into a software was we didn't feel the time was right. Part of it was it was expensive. And then part of it was Chris and I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. At the time, 6 years ago, I was 26 and had a lot of vigor, but more so for the consulting side and learning and getting the experience on that end. Whereas today, they are now that generation that it comes very easy to them, and they are listening to what their peers want. And they are looking at the next generation that's coming out of Iowa State University that's going to go back to the farm, and how can we help them provide the most value to the people that they're going to help in their operations. So yeah, Sam and Mac, shout out to those guys, have done a absolutely phenomenal job in the development, the changes, the feedback, the openness to what things might look like. And I really wanted to shower praise on them the other day. So just a short background here. We did what I would call a soft beta launch on, I think it was March 25th or 26th. Had some initial rollout. Within 24 hours, we had 250 users sign up. By April 10th, we had 1 million acres enrolled in the system.
And that's a voluntary sign up. That's not just like people who are already customers, just migrating them over.
A very small percentage of that. No, we didn't do any migration internally. So if people were interested in signing up and were legacy Profit Manager users, then yeah, they would have signed up. But is a relatively small percentage of existing clients that have made the transfer and are enrolled in the new system. So 1 million acres in 10 days. I don't share that number to say like, oh, look at the number. It's more so just it reaffirmed to me that there is a drive, there is a demand, there is a desire to have a low cost, no cost solution from trusted partners that now has outsized capabilities beyond what legacy Profit Manager offered. And so to share that with the world and to tell people that there's tools out there that can really help them with their business, that was powerful to see. And it was by, the legacy that Chris and I have built into it, but it was two young guys that said, hey, we see the vision. And I put my foot on the gas pedal. I definitely pushed to release it sooner than they wanted to. They probably would have been more comfortable doing it in June, but I saw the momentum, I saw the drive, I saw the demand, and I said, we need to do this now.
Yeah. And I think you said your 2026 event is when you had that, when you were speaking, but was it last year, 2025, did you mean 2026?
2026. Those guys have put in so many hours since January of 2026 that
this thing was built from scratch this year
in 3 months.
Oh, wow. And what's their background? I mean, are they studying, software engineering, or is this like a side project for them?
Sam is in ag business with a minor in agronomy, and Mac is ag engineering.
And just, you don't have to tell us exactly like how much it cost to develop, but maybe just tell us like what percent of what it would have cost 3 years ago did this cost to develop?
1%. And I'll share, I have no problem sharing the numbers with where we sit today, and I'm sure we'll incur more costs, but this is including time. This is including a new computer and a new monitor. We've spent about $10,000 in development.
Wow.
And if we had done this 3 years ago, it probably would have been several $100,000, $1 million. And that's from people that I've talked with that developed tools that are in that space, paying for the developers, paying for the advertising, paying for whatever else. Now, people might look at that and be like, oh, well, there's no way, like you can't do, the cost budget or the efficacy or the safety or the data. I assure you that those systems are in place. It's there. It's built. It was not assembled as like a Jenga tower. It was built methodically. And what I'll give credit to, and I think this is what people need to really understand as they consider building tools in their own farm operation, because the farm profit manager system is not the end all be all for capabilities of AI. Nowhere close to it. There's 98% of other capabilities that people are going to find really awesome uses for in their farm operation. But if you have a solid foundation, and whether that's a solid prompt, solid idea, solid data analysis, solid tools that you have built internally, it makes the system so much better. And that's the credit to 30 years of experience expedited into 3 months of development and production with some world-class intelligence tools to now provide outsized benefit to the industry is the best way that I can describe that. So I hope that inspires people and gets people interested and invigorated, and go out and try these tools. They're at your fingertips for $100 a month.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what it does is it gives the clear advantage to the people who are not only driven, which is you've always had to be driven to do something like this. You still have to be, but to the people who know the problem and know the customer the best. Like that's where the value is that's where the competitive advantage is knowing the problem and knowing the customer. And that's what you guys have built over 30 years. So I mean, I really love to see people like you all win, because it's like you've done the work, right? And now that the tools are commoditized, and maybe commoditized isn't the right term, but definitely more accessible, it's really cool to see that you can pour all of that relationship building and problem solving into something so usable and offer it out to tremendous success already in the first 10 days.
And you've heard people say this, I'm sure, but everyone is a software developer now. So the people that have that experience, you just figure out how to use the tool, and then you can build it and you can generate that success or, better value proposition to your customers. And I think people got a little bit offended by that. I had probably a month or so ago, I had posted something saying that, my personal opinion is I think software as a service is dead in the charging model behind it. Now, there's still some things that we have as paid features in there, integrations to John Deere Ops Center, integrations to QuickBooks, integrations to some of the AI report tools that are built in. That's a throughput cost on what it costs us to do that, as opposed to the actual tool itself, because it's such a low cost development process. And again, doubling down on the consulting that goes into it. But the veterinarian that has run a business for 17 years with small animals, you can be a software developer if you want to be. The person that has hosted podcasts, the person that has gone out and built a small town welding shop that has production of one component. I mean, you can be the software developer because you know the industry, you know the space better than anyone else. And this is nothing against software developers either. In fact, I think it's going to make their job exponentially better to help and assist with the tools and in the right leverage standpoint. Same with lawyers and CPAs. My personal opinion is it's going to put a lot of lawyers and CPAs out of business, but the ones that understand how to use the tools are going to 10x their business. There's no doubt in my mind. So it's the willingness to adapt. It's the understanding how it works, and the potential there is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So ones who know how to use the tool, the ones that know who can spot a customer and a need and offer, instead of, like you said, I agree with you about software as a service. Instead of software as a service, it's now got to be, solution as a service, and software will be part of that, but it's got to be full kind of end-to-end solution. And yeah, I think it gets down to who can solve people's problems for them in the most efficient way possible. And not using these tools, I think, would be a huge, huge mistake if you're trying to solve problems for people. And any of us in business are. It reminds me a little bit of, over the years, I've done some episodes on open source software. And I always wonder, well, how do you, you make this thing and you make it available to anyone. How do you make any money? And usually it was like product support. I help people know how to use it. And it's like, all right, I think we're all kind of headed that way a little bit, because it's not so much just the tool that's the value. It's how to use the tool to come up with the right, overall solution.
It gives more intrinsic value back to the humans that are behind the tools. And that's where I think people get so worried about AI and what it's going to do and how it's going to affect the space. Sure, there's probably some of that. I think there's even more potential in the consulting side to be able to add that human element on top of these other layers. So yeah, it's going to be intriguing.
Well, case in point, right? I imagine AgView Solutions is going to need to hire some more consultants based on this success.
And that was part of the vision for why I wanted to open up that target market audience, if you will, make more people aware of what we're doing, is because you look at, and we've all heard the conversations of how many acres are going to transition over the next 25 years? What's consolidation going to do? I don't need to repeat that story. The question that I asked is, who's going to support those people? Who's going to help them through the transitions? Who's going to help them with the growth opportunities? Well, we are. And we are at a high level of demand within our team. We have 5 consultants. It's me and Chris and 3 others. Probably going to be bringing on a couple more here. And it's people in the space that have the heart for helping people, number one. People that are farming or are involved in agriculture in some capacity. Those are the people who are going to join us on the consulting team because they want to help other people. They want to help people go through this. And so, yeah, not only from a U.S. standpoint on the tool, but I had mentioned offline here, as we move forward, by the time that people are listening to this, we will have done a formal press release in the U.S., and we will be kicking towards a global press release to push this tool to Australia, to the European Union, to South America as next target areas, but really opening it up to the world and saying, I think people should look at that and say, okay, it's not just the value in the tool. It's from a global standpoint, they want to push the value to the tool, but then making sure that people have access to it. The other thing that we didn't mention that I think is important is, why is it free, or what's the heart behind it? Are you selling the data? Are you doing anything like that? Well, if people want the Excel version of Farm Profit Manager, I'll send it to you for free. There's no data selling. There's nothing like that. There's going to be tremendous opportunities that if you as a farmer want to elect to share your data with your lender or share your data with your marketing advisor out of the Farm Profit Manager system, we are going to create avenues for people to do that, but not sell the data. And I think that's totally unique in the space for you to be able to say as a farmer, Shay, I would like to share my data with XYZ lender. Can you build in an integration to where they would be able to see these 5 data points? Where am I at on marketing? Where am I at on cost of production? Where am I at on, cash flow, budget versus actual in the year? Now you have an institution that you work with already has better information. You have better information, and we're the ones that are facilitating, helping that transaction. Everybody wins. Everybody wins in that scenario. So yeah, anyways, the Excel-based tool is free if people want that. They don't want to get caught up in the software or have to worry about anything there. I'm happy to send it to you.
So obviously that's a huge advantage of using the software as opposed to just Excel, because you could build those integrations. Was that the primary driver of I think this would offer more value, or are there other things that are like a big level up now that you have the software, if people were using the Excel before?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So within the tool, I'll hit on a few just like quick features. One is a AI chat agent that's built specifically for your numbers and your operation. So whatever you upload in there, it'll go out, it'll search, it'll find that data, parse out multi-year. Another piece that we have built in, which has I think it's like $20 a month or something, is the ability to generate infinite reports. So you can do customized reports, or we have a series of 15 or 20 different reports on, kind of like lender checkup performance, balance sheet, cash flow, ratio, financial metrics based off the information that you have in. We have a more in-depth and robust marketing outlook. It's way easier to break down where your positions are if you're doing any sort of hedging, the ability to share information with maybe a crop share partner that you have or a landlord that you work with in the business. The other thing that we have that, historically being Excel based, if I wanted to work with a client, they would send me their Excel version. We'd hop on a Zoom call. We'd both be looking on the same screen, or we'd be in person or whatever. Now you can add people in your organization. So if you have a dad and your brother that are farming with you, you all can see the same information in the same system. You'd have your own logins, but now you're not trying to work off of 3 different Excel sheets and, you got old information, then we got to retype it or whatever else, as well as authorizing people to see your information. So again, if that's a lender or a trusted partner, someone on your board of advisors, you can now give them access and permission. You can run multiple entities within it. So that's kind of like the baseline level of that. Now, if people choose to data share with us, and it's a big, bold thing at the beginning when you're signing up, if you choose to data share, great. What we're offering in that is a benchmarking light data so that you can see, where am I at on whatever we feel are the most important, 5 or 6 metrics for someone to look at from a benchmarking standpoint. And personally, we've shied away from benchmarking just because your operation is going to be totally different than mine. But people like that data. And so it's kind of like a reward for sharing your data. What we can do with that on the background, and again, internally with AgView Solutions, is all of that data is anonymized and aggregated. And then it has checks in place to make sure that we have enough farm operations, it's current data, it doesn't have any major outliers in it, to where we can start looking and gaining insights into an average farm operation in Illinois, or 3,000 to 6,000 acre farm operation in Indiana. We can now start doing some really cool things from a perspective standpoint, so that when we do speaking events or when we talk on podcasts or, do guest appearances on some of these different shows, we have real numbers and real data that's providing that perspective back to you as a user. And one of the ultimate goals with that is people get really overwhelmed with getting their cost of production dialed in. But if you hop on and say, I'm a 1,000-acre operation in Idaho, and we have 15 other operators in Idaho, now we can actually have the tool set up to where it will automatically pre-populate your cost of production based on those estimates. And then you adjust and make changes with the goal of being able to sit down with someone that's never done cost of production, maybe as a new farmer, maybe has farmed for 20 years, and within 30 minutes get you really close to your cost of production. That's the goal.
That's really cool. No, this has been awesome, Shay. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I think it's such a exciting story of what's possible and really affirms some ideas that I've had about where this all might go in terms of, who's going to benefit from utilizing these types of tools. And I really think there's a lot of opportunity here. I want to give you a chance to kind of look forward with us and just, as you think your vision for the company, where it goes from here. Obviously, 1 million acres in 10 days is huge. That number is going to continue to grow, especially as you roll out to other countries, EU, South America, Australia, et cetera. How long term are you thinking with this, and cast that vision for us if you can?
I think of this on a 10-year time horizon with a lot that needs to happen in the next year. But I put my foot on the gas pedal to get us to where we are today. And then I took a step back for the development team and for the rest of the team of consultants and said, okay, we're going to do this at your pace from now on. I felt we needed pressure on the timing. And how I would refer to this from the AI piece is a year ago was too early and a year from now is too late. That's my personal opinion on how I think about it. And so when we look over the next 1 year, it's getting the global release and getting the farm profit manager for livestock integrated. It's taking 2 or 3 years to really develop, make sure that we have the tools built out, the processes and procedures, working on the integrations for some of these other businesses that's going to provide the most value to the farmer. And then when I think about this on a 10-year horizon, it's what else are farmers going to ask us to build? And I think that's the sweet spot that the industry has really been asking for, not only the personal connection of the consultants and the people that you work with as strategic advisors. That's certainly a demand. But I think the other demand is help me build what I want. Help me build what we want to see for the capabilities within these tools. And that might be add-ons. It might be key integrations within the tool as it exists today. It might be a premium type service that's offered. I think there's a huge amount of opportunity when you put that collective mind together and say, what does the farmer want? And so ultimately over the next decade, the farmer wins. We're focused on helping the farmer be successful and maintaining what I would call like the third party status of being in the industry, providing value to the industry, but not being a major corporation that has to answer to anybody outside of the AgView Solutions team. So creating those trusted partnerships and providing value back to the farmer, that's what I see for the next decade.
Well, that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much to Shay Foulk for being on the show. I encourage each of you to go check out what they're doing at AgView Solutions. We'll leave links in the show notes for that. And through that site, you can also go visit their Farm Profit Manager app and learn more about that as well. It's free. So if you are in a position where you're managing a farm, I think you should check that out. And obviously, the hope is that you work with the Shay and his team on making some of these farm business management decisions. So thank you again to Shay for being on the show. I think that's a really thought-provoking episode about how AI can be utilized and how it might change some of these ag tech business models to be more concentrated on the value that humans bring to the table. So really enjoyed that. Thank you again to Shay. Thank you, all of you, for your time and your attention. I do not take it lightly. I'll be back next week with another story of ag innovation.